Today we will make sure that you can clear this pure fiction. I will explain to you the fundamentals of Note 1 and Note 2, give you a criteria on when you should restart your run, go through the best characters and teams for Note 1 and 2, and finally discuss a fourth team, which is basically a team which raw dogs the whole pure fiction. One thing I want you to keep in mind is, I only care about 30k points on average per note. I just want to get all the rewards and to get over it. And you luckily have 6 weeks the time before the pure fiction refreshes, so you got more than enough time to build up the characters you need to get all the rewards. So there is no need to rush it. So let's start with the fundamentals of Note 1. What are the enemies and what do they do? As you can see, these are the enemies for the first note. We got this very irritating dot elite enemy who doesn't do any attacks but just applies dots the whole time. And those dots hurt really bad when they stack up. So you want to make sure that you target them. And when one of them lives long enough and he has applied a lot of dots on you, he does an ability where he triggers all the dots on you which explode, which does a lot of damage, but it does remove the dots on you though. But you don't want to get to that point where the dots explode on you, because that will make sustaining really difficult. Then we got this dog. This dog is not such a big problem, you know, because he just attacks, he just makes a clone of himself. But in my experience, he has never made a clone of himself, since he's quite squishy. So with just AoE attacks, he dies very fast. And we got this wolf. The thing with this wolf is this: his attacks are always blast, which means he attacks one ally and then your adjacent allies also get attacked. But the thing with him is he has stacks. And what do those stacks mean? Well, he starts the battle with 0 stacks. When an ally of him attacks, so in our perspective, if an enemy attacks, he gets 1 stack. Luckily in our case, this dot elite monster doesn't attack, he just applies dots the whole time, so it isn't counted as a stack in his case. But this dog does give a stack. And if he has 6 out of 6 stacks, that whenever he attacks, he heals a little bit, which is something you don't want to make happen. So for the first wave, your primary goal is to focus the wolves and focus the elite monsters. And this small dog will die in the end by the bounces of your imaginary MC or the AoE attacks of your Himeka or Rappa or wherever you got. But these two are the main targets. For the second wave, we got this soldier. He isn't that big of a problem. He just does single target attacks with a chance to weaken you. But it isn't that big of a problem, since we got bigger problems in this wave, which is this bug. The thing with this bug is, when he spawns on the field, and it is his turn, he goes into this charging state, and then the next turn he gets, he explodes on you, attacking one ally and the adjacent allies, with a chance to outrage you. So what does this outrage debuff on your allies do? It makes it so that your ally just attacks a random enemy with his basic attack for 1 or 2 turns, which is something that you absolutely don't want to happen, and if it happens, you restart the challenge. But if you got a reactive cleanser like Lucha, which in his case the reaction is, if your ally gets below 50%, he casts his skill and removes that outrage debuff on you. Or you got Linksha, her reaction, which in her case is her pick, which does a follow-up attack once every 2 turns when an ally of yours gets below 60%. Or you just got your Link's ult ready or your Natasha ult ready to clear that outrage debuff on your allies. Or you don't even need a reactive healer, because if for example Ranmei got outraged, in her case it doesn't matter, since all she does is just a basic attack. But only if she has already 2 or 3 stacks of her skill and she just casted her ult, then it's not a big problem for Wanmei in that scenario. But in the most cases, you don't want to allow this bug to explode on you, since if you kill him, he gives vulnerability to all enemies, which makes it easier to kill them. But sure, you don't need a reactive healer always. For example, if your Himeko got enraged, but very next person that takes action is for example your Gallagher, and you just kill on Himeko, then Himeko isn't enraged anymore. But it can cause kill point issues and you miss that vulnerability debuff on the enemies. And if for example Rappa got enraged and she's in her ult form with her enhanced basic attacks, when she attacks a random enemy when she's enraged, she doesn't cast her enhanced basic attacks, she just casts her normal basic attack, even though her basic attacks are enhanced, which is quite interesting. But the main takeaway is, focus this bug, don't allow him to explode on you, and if you can't manage to kill him before he explodes on you, then I'd recommend to restart your run, since in most cases you really want him to explode and to make the enemies easier to kill with the vulnerability debuff he gives, and you don't want to risk that he outrages your allies. And then we got the trash can. How the trash can works is quite simple. He doesn't start with any weakness type, and to give him a weakness type, you need to attack him with an ally to give him that ally's weakness type. But the thing is, you want to apply debuffs on him of the ally who does the most actions. So if you, for example, got your imaginary MC, you can cast her skill first on the trash can, because the first hit of imaginary MC skill has extra toughness reduction, which makes it easier to weakness break this trash can. Since you don't want to kill this trash can, you want to weakness break him ASAP, since he only goes away if you of course kill him, but he's quite tanky, or if you just weakness break him. So we don't want to do damage on him, we just want to weakness break him. So we don't want to do our main damage things on him, we want to do that on this bug. So my recommendation is cast your first hit of your imaginary MC's skill on this trash can, so that he has imaginary weakness type, and if you're lucky, then the next 5 bounces go onto this trash can too, and you're good to go. And one another thing I forgot to mention about the bug, apart from the trash can, is if he's in his charging state, this bug, and you weakness break him, then he goes out of that charging state, and he starts the whole cycle again. He gets his turn, he goes in the charging state, next turn he explodes, but if he's in the charging state, you weakness break him, he goes out of the charging state. So you want to make sure that you continuously weakness break this bug, so he doesn't get the chance to explode on you. So back to the trash can, imaginary MC, quite nice on him. You don't want to do damage on trash can, you want to weakness break him ASAP. So your main focus is the bug and the beetle the whole time, and you want to ignore the soldier and just hope that he dies from the AoE attacks, which he will. And if you let this trash can alive for too long, every time it is his turn, he gets an attack boost, which can hurt quite a lot if he has a lot of stacks. So a thing with trash can is, you want to apply weaknesses on him of characters, do a lot of attacks of that weakness type. So if you got, for example, a Ronmei, you don't want to attack this trash can with Ronmei's basic attack, since he can just have 2 weakness types at most. So if you out attack with Ronmei this trash can, he gets an ice weakness, and if your other teammates are like Himeko and imaginary MC, and you attack with Himeko this trash can, then the weakness of this trash can is just ice and fire, no imaginary. So you want to make sure that he has imaginary and fire in this case. So that's a thing you need to keep in mind with him. And then we got Bronya. The thing with Bronya is, she always does 2 things. She does a basic attack on you, and she casts an ability, so her skill on an enemy, which cleanse all debuffs on that enemy and advance forwards that enemy, which is a really big pain in the ass. So if, for example, you have a lot of debuffs on this enemy and you just weakness broke him, and then it is Bronya's turn and she casts her skill on this enemy, I'd say restart the run, because it will take so much longer to clear this stage then. Since you just weakness broke him, you got a lot of dots on him and all that stuff, and Bronya cleansed that. So you need to get lucky that Bronya hopefully casts her skill on this small enemy instead of this elite monster. Sure, even if you just weakness broke this small enemy and he also has a lot of dots or something, it doesn't matter, since he is quite squishy, you can accept that. But you don't want to have a situation where you just weakness broke this big enemy and Bronya immediately recovers him from his weakness broken state and dispels all debuffs. But if the enemy didn't have any debuffs or wasn't weakness broken at all, then it doesn't matter if Bronya casts her skill on him, because you don't lose anything. Sure, he gets a turn immediately, but that is then a sustaining issue and not a killing them issue, if you know what I mean. So what's the main takeaway from the first note? So what's the main takeaway from this whole note 1? You want to focus this elite monster in the first wave and this wolf and make sure he doesn't get 6 stacks and heals from his attacks. In the second wave, you want to apply the correct weaknesses on the trash can and continuously weakness break and kill this bug ASAP so he doesn't explode on you. And in the third wave, you just focus this elite monster so he doesn't apply a lot of dots on you the whole time, and hope that Bronya doesn't use her skill on this elite monster who has a lot of dots and was just weakness broken. So you don't want that to happen. You want to hope that she uses her skill on an elite monster who wasn't just the weakness broken and didn't have many dots. So in the best case scenario, it happens to a small enemy, her skill. And now the fundamentals of Note 2. In the first wave, we got this Shadow. Her full name is Decaying Shadow, but I will just call her Shadow for now. Every attack she does has a small chance to imprison you. And what does imprisonment do? It delays your action by quite a lot. So when she imprisons you, you restart the challenge. That's a thing you need to keep in mind. And another thing she does is she goes into this state where she just waits and does nothing. And she starts with 9 stacks, and every time she gets attacked, she loses a stack. And when it's her turn, she does a bouncing attack for every stack she has remaining. So if she has 9 stacks and you attacked her 3 times, she has 6 stacks, she gets a turn, she does a bouncing attack 6 times, randomly to your characters. With each hit having a small chance to imprison your ally. The other enemy we got is this wolf. The nice thing with this wolf is, when he dies, he applies bleed to the enemies, which makes it easier to kill them, since the whole buff of this purification is that enemies get increased dot damage. And we got the same wolf as in Note 1. He starts with 0 stacks stacks. Every time an ally attacks, he gets a stacks. If he has 6 stacks, he heals from his attacks. But one difference is his attacks aren't blast, only single target. With the wolf in Note 1, it is a blast attack. For the second wave, we got this very irritating robot that whenever he attacks, he becomes literally invincible for that turn. That whenever he attacks, he gets this irritating shield that neglects any damage he gets. So you want to make sure you always target him, you kill his ass as fast as possible. The other enemy we got is this robot. He isn't that big of a problem. He just attacks a single character every time. But sometimes he heals his whole team, which is quite a pain in the ass. But he is quite squishy, so he shouldn't be that big of a problem. I never had really issues with him healing the enemies, since he dies that fast. And he does that healing ability once every 2 turns, I think. So by that time, he should already be dead. And then we got the trash can again. Same thing as in Note 1. Applying weaknesses on him of characters would do a lot of consistent attacks. He can have 2 weakness types at max, so don't attack him with an ally like Mei if your team has 2 other weakness types. So if your team has Mei, so ice, a lightning character, and 2 wind characters, you want to make sure you attack him with the wind and lightning, assuming that the lightning character is a character who does a lot of attacks. And for the third wave, we got Yangqing. Yangqing does a lot of blast attacks, and after some turns he gets into this stance where he attacks all enemies. But the most irritating thing with him is he attacks a single ally with the chance to freeze that character. So if you get frozen by his attack, you can restart it. Because when you get frozen, you get pushed down the action bar. So even if you cleanse that frozen state, you have already been pushed down by that freeze. And that's the same case with this Shadow. When she imprisons you, you're already pushed down. So even if you cleanse yourself from that imprisonment, it's too late because you already got pushed down. And another irritating thing is this small monster. When he attacks, he has a small chance to reduce your speed. So when your main DPS gets his speed reduced by this small enemy, then I recommend you to restart too. But if, for example, your Mei got attacked and her speed reduced, it's alright. But luckily, it doesn't happen that often that he reduces your character's speed. The chance is quite small. But even though, when it happens, you will lose some points. So the main takeaways are this. You should restart in the first note. If the bug explodes, he outrages you, and you got no reactive cleanser. Sure, if he explodes and no one of yours got outraged, it can be alright, but you should not even get to that point, you know. You want to really kill him, make him explode, so the enemies get this vulnerability debuff to kill the other enemies a bit easier. But still, worst case scenario, he explodes, he outrages you, and you cannot cleanse that outrage, just restart. The other time you should restart is when Bronya uses her skill on an elite enemy, was a lot of dots, or was just weakness broken, since it will make killing that elite monster way harder. Since you need to do all of that again. So you need to reapply all your dots, you need to try to weakness break that elite monster again. So in the best case scenario, you need to hope that Bronya use her skill on that small enemy instead of the elite monster. Sure, she can also use it on the elite monster if that elite monster wasn't weakness broker or didn't have any dots. Then it's alright, of course. And another time you can restart this when the wolf of wave 1 gets his 6 stacks and heals the wolf time, which will make it quite difficult to kill him if you cannot one-shot him. So you need to make sure he doesn't get 6 stacks. And for note 2, when should you restart? When the Shadow imprisons you, and any attack that the Shadow does has a small chance to imprison you. Since if you get imprisoned, you get pushed down. Even if you cleanse that imprisonment, you have already been pushed down. So if you get imprisoned, just restart. And you cannot imagine how many times that happened to me, how irritating that is. Another time you want to restart is when Yangqing freezes you, especially your DPS, since he will push your DPS down with the freeze. And when your DPS gets a turn, your DPS will get delayed again a little bit. So main takeaway is, when he freezes you, start again. Another time you want to restart is when that small monster reduces the speed of your DPS or sub-DPS, since the main role of your DPS or sub-DPS is to do as many attacks as possible. And when their speed gets reduced, they cannot do that. So if that happens, just restart. You need to hope that the small monster attacks your healer or your harmony character. And the same with note 1, restart when you cannot kill the wolf, when he gets into this when he has his 6 stacks and heals continuously. And another general rule is when to restart is when you cannot do consistent crits if applicable, when enemy X didn't attack ally Y to just get enough energy for your ult. That doesn't happen often. That is when you have a team and you know the ins and out of that team. You know that if my character doesn't get his ult in this turn now, then everything will go downhill from there. There are some very specific situations like that. The other thing that you can get unlucky with is the bounces of your characters, that the bouncer didn't hit the imported enemies. For example, if you use Harmony MC skill on the trash can in the second wave, but all the other 5 bouncers go onto that soldier instead of the bug or the trash can. That's just quite unlucky, you know. Sure, once or twice you can handle it, but if it happens the whole time, then it's just an unlucky run, you know. Because the main focus is, for Note 1 is, in the second wave is, trying to weakness break the trash can and beetle the whole time. The same with Note 2. You want to hope that the bouncers go onto that irritating shield robot and the trash can and not onto this one who doesn't have imaginary weakness. And the last thing you can get unlucky with is when your squishy ally gets attacked the whole time instead of a tankier ally. That's just an unlucky run, you know what I mean. And when it feels like there is this one character in your team who gets attacked the whole time, who's like already dead in the second wave, such unlucky things can happen. So let's get to it. The best characters and teams for the first Note. On the left, we got here the main buff of the pure fiction. So enemy targets get increased dot, and if they receive dot, they do less damage. And if they're attacked, they get advance forwarded. Beneath there you can see the sub buffs we can choose from and the enemies in the first Note. And on the right we got Pride, and we are going to look at which characters we can use for this Note. First of all, let's go through the sustainers. Bailu is a no-go. She doesn't do anything apart from sustaining, and we want to have really characters who or bring a lot of value when it's their turn, like Alingsha. Her skill does AoE, her ultimate does AoE. She has a pick who does AoE follow attacks. She cleanses debuffs, has the same type as the enemies, fire in this case. So Bailu is a no-go, but Lingsha is like literally made for this Note, just perfect. Gallagher, also really nice here. Fire weakness, he has an AoE ult, and when he has used his ult, he gets advance forwarded, and if you have him E6, that enhanced base attack does extra weakness break efficiency. So also amazing pick here. I personally have had some issues with him in the first Note, though to sustaining, because the dots of these enemies were like stacking up and I got like one-shotted. A tip I have for when you're using Gallagher is this. Try to use him when you're weakness breaking a character, not when you're trying to kill a character. Because when you ult an enemy, they get a debuff, and when you attack that debuffed enemy, your whole team heals. So when you use his ult against low HP enemies to finish them off, then you won't get any healing from his ult. So you want to make sure that if you have issues sustaining with Gallagher, hold onto his ult to not finish off every enemy. Try to use his ult when you know like, there is this one enemy that won't die from this ult. So that when you attack that enemy with his basic attack or any other ally, that if Gallagher attacks, the whole team heals, and if the ally attacks an enemy, that ally heals too. And now we got Ho-Ho. Ho-Ho is quite nice. She doesn't do anything in her turn specifically, but she gives nice energy with her ult, and she can cleanse all the dots of this irritating elite enemy. So she's also a quite nice pick. Lucha is also a quite nice pick because, one, the enemies have imaginary weakness type, and his ult is AoE. Especially if you run him with imaginary MC, so that his ult also does a super break damage, which is quite nice. Jinx is quite whack. Sure, she cleanses debuffs, but apart from that, she doesn't bring any value. No one has quantum weakness. That's the same case with Natasha. Sure, they have physical weakness, but she's just so whack, you know. So if you got Gallagher, use him here. It's quite unfortunate that there is no any other abundance character that isn't a limited one, which is good, quite good here. But we can go to the preservation characters, and a free-to-play one we can use is Fire MC, since her ult targets all enemies and she is fire. But thing is, in the first Note, you mostly will use Imaginary MC, and you can't use Imaginary MC and Fire MC at the same time, which is quite a shame. And of course, we got Aventurine, who's also quite nice, amazing character, and he gives the whole team increased effect resistance, which makes it for this elite monsters a bit more difficult to apply their dots on you. And we got Fuswan, not the best character of course here, no one has quantum weakness, but still makes surviving a bit easier, gives your whole team crit rate if needed in that specific team, but still makes sustaining quite easy compared to Natasha and Lynx. So literally the only good free-to-play sustainer here is Gallagher, which is quite a shame. Sure, we have Fire MC, but he will most likely use Imaginary MC, but still, she might work, but it will be quite difficult. But we will make the teams in a moment. Now let's go to the destruction characters. Which ones are viable here? Well, I'd like to say Clara, but the thing is, 2 enemies in this Note don't attack, which is the elite enemies and the bug. They both don't attack, which is quite whack against Clara, who wants to be attacked, since Clara goes very nice with the third sub buff, which says whenever you attack an enemy, they get wind shear on them. And since Clara attacks A lot of times due to the advance forward of this wall main buff, it makes her quite broken here, but not in this note. Sure, she can work if you're really lucky that the small enemies in the third wave attack Clara continuously and Bronya attacks her, but she's quite difficult compared to Yunli, since Yunli is basically an upgraded Clara. Because the thing with Yunli is, when you use her ult, she doesn't need to be attacked to launch her counter attack. That's the nice thing about Yunli. Well, the only one who is nice here is Firefly, since they got the fire weakness. Firefly goes Speedy Gonzalez. Just use the first buff and you're good to go. I'd also like to say that Blade is good here, but he is better, just like with Yunli and Clara, in the second wave, where every enemy it doesn't attack. So here Blade and Yunli and Clara aren't that great, but in the second node they can shine quite a lot. But still I will put them here, because you can make them work here. And no one else from the destruction characters are really great in this node. Hook could work, but the thing with Hook is her skill is single target. Sure, she does apply fire dot, which is quite nice, but she's so dependent on her ult, you know. Her ult also attacks a single enemy, and when she ults, her skill get enhanced, which also attacks an adjacent enemies. But still, she is just so whack, you know. 4-star DPSs are in general quite whack and difficult to work with. Regarding erudition, Argenti might work here since the elite monsters have a physical weakness. The Bug has physical weakness, Bronya has physical weakness, so he could work here. We got Hertha. Hertha's of course nice, but will she shine here? It's difficult to say. We can put her for now here and look at which teams we can make with her, since she does quite a lot of attacks, you know. When an enemy gets below 50% HP, she does a follow-up attack. And when you use the third buff, she will apply dots on the enemies the whole time. And of course we got Himeko. She's like literally made for this first half too. Amazing. The thing with Himeko is, every time she does an attack, she has a 50% chance to apply burn. So if you get really lucky with Himeko, she applies burn on the enemies with every attack she does, and you will be good to go with her. We got Jade. Is Jade nice? She does a lot of AoE follow-up attacks. Her ult is AoE, and she makes an ally she marks with her skill a bit faster, and she does additional quantum damage, all that stuff. But no one has quantum weakness, but still we can make her work in a team. We got Yingwan. He's quite whack here. No one has lightning weakness, you know. He's just too whack. Cuckoo also whack. Rappa amazing here. She's also made for this node. I mean, like, I bet the only reason why this first sub buff exists is because of Rappa and Imaginary MC. Since if the last line of this sub buff didn't exist, then you would push the enemies down the wall time with imprisonment, which would make triggering the dots on them a bit difficult. And Surfall is also a no-go. Harmony characters, we got Asta, quite nice. She gives your whole team a lot of speed buffs. Bronya also nice, with a good DPS she can shine quite a lot. Hanya is a no-go here since she's single target. Robin, of course, is made for perfection. She gives the whole team a lot of damage bonus and a whole extra turn. Bronmei, also amazing, especially amazing in a super break team with the first buff, to make sure that when they are weakness broken and they get a turn, and if Bronmei's ult is active and you have hit them, that they get delayed a bit extra, so you can do a little bit more super break damage on them. Sparkle, not the best here, but she can make things work. Tingyun, also not the best, but can make things work. Imagine MC is literally made for this place. Pretty amazing. A lot of bounces, a lot of toughness reduction. And Yukong is a no-go. Too clunk to play with, so basically to whack. Regarding hunt characters, we will come to them in the force team, which basically means that you want to kill every enemy one by one, disregarding the purification buffs, but we will discuss that in a moment. Now for Nioth characters. Regarding Acheron, she is best in the second node and not in the first node. The nice thing with Acheron is though, she does regardless toughness reduction, which is quite nice, but still not good enough to pick for this node. Black Swan, same case. You can make her work. Some enemies have a wind weakness, so we can say sure for now you can make her work in the first node. Guinevere, also quite nice here. Fire type, applies quite a lot of dots and vulnerability. Jauki, also nice, like an upgraded Guinevere basically. Kafka, also nice, but not in this node. Luca, no go. And now Pella, she can work fine actually, because her ult is so cheap. She got a lot of defense reduction, and if you put an eagle set on her, she gets her turns way faster, which makes it so that she can cast her ult way more often. So she can work, but she wouldn't be my first choice at all. But for now we can put it, just because her ult is so cheap and it attacks all enemies, of course. Sampo, also great, better in the second node, but he might work here just because he makes so much great use of the wall main buff and sub buff. Silver Wolf, no go. And now Welt. Welt is actually the most unsynergistic character in this wall perfection, especially with the first sub buff, since no one gets imprisoned. And Welt's whole thing is about imprisoning enemies and doing more damage to imprisoned enemies. Sure, you can use him with the third sub buff, but still that is unsynergistic, since sure, now the enemies can get imprisoned, but you will delay them so much that they will already die before the dot gets a chance to kill them. So Welt hard no go. So these are all the characters we got now, which can work the best in this node. So what kind of teams can we make? Well, on the left side we got all the available sustainers. Beside that we got the buffers, so harmony characters. Beside that we got the dot characters. Actually Himeko falls in between them, since she also applies quite a lot of dots if you get lucky with the 50-50. So we can put her in the middle. And on the right we got the DPSs. Well, Pella isn't a DPS actually, but more a debuffer. But she doesn't apply dots, she's more like to shred the enemies with her consistent ults. Well, the very best team we can create is of course with Robin or Ronmei, with a Himeko and Imaginary MC. This would be the best team you can create. Or instead of Himeko you can go for a Rappa, or no harmony at all, and a team like this. Just you can mix and match it all you want. It's just that Lingsha is so broken she will clear the first node easily. Some easier teams we can create is like a Gallagher with Gwynethane, Imaginary MC and Ronmei. This team could also work quite nice. So basically a super big Gwynethane. Or instead of Ronmei you put in a Himeko. A team like this can also work quite nice. Or you change up Gallagher with any other sustainer you got. A Ho-Ho can be nice to ult more often with everyone. Lucha too, of course. Fuswan will make it quite difficult, a team like this, since weakness breaking will get quite difficult. So Gallagher is way better, I'd say. Or you go to full dot route, a team like this, and Himeko's existence is to just basic attack the whole time and follow up attack, since Black Swan does AoE dot, which is quite broken. So if you get lucky with Himeko's dots, the Arcana stacks will get big quite easily. Or you go for a Lucha, Blade, Bronya and Jade team. This team is actually way better in the second node, but if your Lucha is very fast, has Eagle set on him, you can technically shred all the enemies, but it will get very difficult since they don't have wind weakness, so it will be really difficult to do this, since the elite enemies don't even attack you. So this team is way better in the second node, but if you really don't have anyone else and your second node team is already set, then this might work, but it will be really difficult. And there are a million more teams you can make with these characters. Just try to experiment, mix and match however you can. Keep the fundamentals in mind, and then you might barely squeeze out the 30k points in the first node. And now the best characters for the second node. We can keep the sustainers as is, just like with this first node. The harmony characters we can also keep just as is, and I also kept some characters which we can easily use in the second node. Like I said, Pella makes killing the enemies way easier, just shred them. She does a lot of ults because of her cheap ult. Put an eagle set on her, you're good to go. Jiao, also quite nice, especially with Acheron together. So Acheron can pop off. We got Sampo, well of course because they got wind weakness, so Sampo can work. A better Sampo is of course Black Swan. Blade is actually pretty nice here, since all these enemies attack compared to the first node. 2 enemies in attack, and that's the bug and the elite. In this case, everyone attacks, and since Blade wants to be attacked, to get as much stacks as possible so he can follow attack, which attacks all enemies, put him with, for example, a Jade, a Bronya, and a good ass Lucha, then you might barely scrape out those 30k points. But my favorite team in the second node is an Acheron with a Clara, an Aventurine, and Robin, using the third sub buff. Since every enemy attacks, and if you get lucky, they all attack Clara. Clara does full attack. They get a wind shear on them. Acheron gets a free stack. Plus, if you just basic attack with Aventurine, it also counts as a debuff for Acheron. So Acheron will get her ult up, just like how Fei Xiao gets her ult up. Really fast and easy. And of course, you can change Clara up with a Yunli. But this is really an easy team. And you can change Robin with whoever you got, of course. Favorably Robin herself, since she makes Clara way stronger. But then Ronmei can also work, of course, quite fine. It might be a bit more difficult, but you can also scrape by the 30k points. And of course, Kafka, also quite amazing in this second note. Everyone has lightning weakness, apart from this wolf. So put her in a Black Swan team, and Robin or Ruanmei, and whichever sustainer you got, you're good to go. Yingguan is still a no-go, I'd say, since his Lightning Lord is so slow. But Surfall can work quite fine here, since she applies a shock, and her shocks will do way more damage because of the main buff. So a Surfall, Kafka, any sustainer, best case I'd say is Woho. And Ruanmei could also easily clear this note to get the 30k points. If you got no Ruanmei, you can go for Asta, just to make everyone a little bit more fast and give a lot of attack to Surfall and to Kafka. And the nice thing with Asta is her basic attack applies burn, so she will contribute a little bit of damage. I don't have imaginary MC in this second note, because in this note the best teams are teams which make use of the third sub-buff, and no one has really imaginary weakness apart from this robot and Yangqing himself. And even Fire MC will make sustaining quite difficult here, but if you have really no one else, then you need to go for her, I'd say, just because her ult attacks all enemies, so you can apply as much dots as possible with the third sub-buff. Or another team you can go with is a Clara, Herta, Robin and Gallagher team. This is a really difficult team to pull off, but the synergy is there. Sure, no one has really their weakness types, so it will get difficult. It's more like you need to really raw dog your damage through it. But the nice thing is, every time Herta does a follow-up attack when someone gets below 50% HP, she will do a follow-up attack all enemies. They will all get advanced forwarded. Clara will get attacked if you're lucky. She will do a follow-up attack. So Clara will really pop off here. Everyone will get continuously the third sub-buff, it's a win share. So this team can also work to just squeeze out those 30k points. But yeah, there are many more teams you can make with these characters. Try to experiment, take your time. We have 6 weeks the time. But we also got another team type, which is the Force team, which basically means you want to raw dog kill everyone, basically almost neglecting the Pure Fiction buff. These team types are mostly run without sustainers, but you can also do it with a sustainer, which will get you less points. But if you get 30k, who cares? And that is mostly a team like Fei Xiao, Imaginary March 7th, with your Robin and your Aventurine. So if you go with a team like this, then your main goal is, if you use it for example on the second note, you want to ult the elite monster the whole time with Fei Xiao and want to make sure that that elite monster dies when you have ult with Fei Xiao. In the second wave, you ult this irritating robot with Fei Xiao, and in the third wave, this elite monster gets tankier, so you cannot one-shot him anymore. So you need to cast 2 Fei Xiao ults on this elite monster, or 1 Fei Xiao ult, or an enhanced basic attack of March 7th to kill him. And if that's not enough, Fei Xiao will do her follow-up attack and finish it off. But it is possible. If you just do a lot of tries, get lucky, hope that you crit the whole time, then you can squeeze out the 30k points. And that's the same case with a Seele. You can just go hyper carry Seele. A team like this, even you can do it without a sustainer and go with Sparkle. And you can use her in any note. Make sure Seele just kills everyone continuously. She gets a turn, another turn. You need to hope that she one-shots the elite monsters with her ult, and that she of course crits with it. But it's really difficult to pull off. You need to get lucky a lot of times. You need to go for the perfect run, but it is possible. Or you go with such an hyper carry team on the first note. But yeah, the main carry is of course Lingsha herself. And of course you just use the third sub buff in this case then to apply as much dots as possible on them. You can even switch out Imaginary March 7 with a Herta if you need a bit more AoE. Just whatever works better for you, which you have built more. You can even put out a Topaz and put in a Robin like this. But this is quite a limited team. Everyone's a limited character. So basically these are the characters in a Force team. Maybe other characters can also work, but these are the main ones that really can get you those 30k points if you get really lucky and play it perfectly. So all in all, just mix and match your characters however you can. I just gave you some recommendations. Just don't stress, you got 6 weeks the time. Just build up the characters you got. And I get it, it is really irritating to see an endgame mode where you're missing just 1 star and you want to finish it as fast as possible, because that feeling of not being able to accomplish this endgame is really irritating. It really eats you, in my case then. But just stay calm, do your thing, enjoy it, enjoy the process. I personally don't care about 8k points, I just care about 60k points to get all my rewards, and that's it. So I wish you all the luck, I thank you for your time and see you the next time. Bye.